"Get that sailor out of here immediately!" Commander Harrison barked into his radio, eyes fixed on the approaching Japanese Maritime Self-Defense Force vessel cutting through the choppy Pacific waters. "I can't have any distractions during this operation." The USS Valiant's bridge hummed with tension as the 300-foot destroyer prepared for its most critical mission in years. A joint rescue operation with international allies that could make or break Commander Harrison's 20-year naval career. The Japanese destroyer Akagi sliced through the morning swells, its sleek hull gleaming against the gray Pacific horizon. On board was Captain Yamamoto, whose expertise in underwater rescue operations was legendary throughout the Pacific Fleet. But there was one problem that made Harrison's stomach churn with anxiety. The operation required precise, real-time communication between the two vessels, and none of his officers spoke a word of Japanese. Behind them, Seaman Marcus Thompson quietly swabbed the deck near the bridge's entrance, his movements methodical and invisible. The same sailor Harrison had just ordered, removed. His eyes briefly met the commander's before looking away, revealing nothing. No one knew about the Japanese language certificate hidden in his small quarters, and no one had any idea that in just a few hours, he would save not just the mission, but dozens of lives trapped beneath the Pacific's unforgiving surface. 3 hours earlier, the USS Valiant had been a storm of preparation since dawn. The guided missile destroyer, one of the Navy's most advanced vessels, buzzed with activity as 300 sailors readied for Operation Pacific Guardian. The mission was unprecedented in its complexity, a joint rescue operation with the Japanese Maritime Self-Defense Force to save survivors from a commercial vessel that had gone down in international waters during the night's typhoon. "Captain Yamamoto arrives at precisely 0800 hours, Commander Harrison announced during the emergency briefing in the ship's main conference room, his voice carrying the weight of command authority. "His ship carries the most advanced deep-sea rescue equipment in the Pacific. This operation could save 43 civilian lives." He straightened his already immaculate uniform. "Success here means international recognition for the Valiant and everyone aboard her." The department heads nodded with military precision. The chief engineering officer outlined the technical modifications made to accommodate joint operations. The operations officer confirmed all rescue equipment was calibrated and ready. The communications officer had established satellite links with Fleet Command and international maritime authorities. "Remember," Harrison's voice dropped to emphasize gravity, "Captain Yamamoto is not just any officer. He's led more successful deep-sea rescues than any commander in the Pacific theater. One mistake in coordination, and those civilians die." His steel-gray eyes scanned each face around the table. "The eyes of both our navies are on this operation." Lieutenant Rodriguez, the communications officer, raised her hand. "Sir, I've reviewed the communication protocols. Captain Yamamoto's English is limited to basic maritime terminology. Shouldn't we request a Japanese interpreter from Fleet Command?" Harrison waved dismissively. "His executive officer speaks excellent English, and we've updated our translation software on all ship systems." He tapped his tablet. "Military-grade AI translation tested specifically for naval operations. We're covered." As the briefing dispersed, Harrison pulled aside Chief Petty Officer Martinez, head of deck operations. "Chief, I want your sailors invisible during the joint operation. This deck needs to run like clockwork without any distractions. No mistakes, no confusion." "Understood, Commander. My sailors know their duty." Outside the briefing room, the Valiant transformed into a precision instrument. Fresh signal flags appeared on every mast. Crew members practiced their most professional bearing. The deck gleamed under multiple inspections. The USS Valiant wasn't just a warship today, it was America's representative on the world stage, and every sailor was an actor in a carefully choreographed performance of naval excellence. At the center of it all stood Commander Harrison, adjusting everything from the bridge's equipment arrangement to the precise positioning of his officers. His 15-year climb from ensign to destroyer commander had been built on such attention to detail. The Yamamoto operation wasn't just about saving lives, it was about proving American naval superiority and securing his path to admiral's stars. Harrison checked his watch. 2 hours until the Japanese arrival. He surveyed his command with satisfaction. Everything was perfect. Everything was under control. The invisible sailor. In the ship's lower decks, Seaman Marcus Thompson worked methodically in the engineering spaces, his movements efficient and practiced. At 24, he'd been aboard the Valiant for 18 months. Invisible labor in a visible world of military hierarchy. He cleaned and maintained equipment with precision that exceeded regulations, checking valve alignments and testing emergency systems with mathematical accuracy. From his maintenance kit, he retrieved technical manuals written in multiple languages, studying hydraulic systems and emergency protocols during his breaks. His fingers briefly touched a worn book hidden beneath regulation materials, advanced Japanese maritime terminology, alongside a well-used Japanese-English dictionary. The pages showed extensive notes in both languages, evidence of years of private study. His radio crackled with routine orders from Chief Martinez. All deck personnel, maintain standard operations, VIP arrival in 1 hour, stay sharp, stay invisible. Roger, Chief, Marcus responded, quickening his pace. As he serviced the ship's communication arrays, his reflection appeared in the polished metal surfaces. Bachelor's degree in international relations from Community College, advanced Japanese language certification from the Defense Language Institute, fluent in both formal and military Japanese, all leading to swabbing decks and maintaining equipment on America's most advanced destroyer. 2 years ago, he'd returned from language training in Yokosuka with dreams of working in naval intelligence or international liaison roles. 250 rejection letters later, his student loans demanded payment, and the Navy had personnel needs. The Valiant needed sailors, not linguists. Temporary assignment, his detailer had promised. Yet here he remained. He'd watched countless international exercises from his position on deck, silently understanding conversations in multiple languages while cleaning equipment. He'd overheard strategic discussions between officers where cultural misunderstandings created tension, all while earning a sailor's basic pay. The irony wasn't lost on him. In an increasingly connected world requiring international cooperation, his skills remained hidden behind the anonymity of enlisted service. As Marcus completed his maintenance rounds, he retrieved the Japanese maritime journal he'd been reading during meal breaks. His phone buzzed with a notification from his student loan servicer. Payment overdue. He sighed, tucking the journal away. Another day, another duty station, another chance to use skills no one knew he possessed. He continued his work routine, nodding respectfully as officers passed without acknowledging his presence. Just another sailor in a ship full of very important people, conducting very important business. The Japanese arrival. At precisely 0800 hours, the Japanese destroyer Akagi appeared on the horizon, its distinctive silhouette cutting through Pacific swells with mechanical precision. The vessel, bristling with advanced rescue equipment and deep-sea recovery systems, approached the Valiant with the confidence of a ship accustomed to impossible missions. Commander Harrison stood on the bridge wing, surrounded by his senior officers, all wearing their most professional bearing. The Valiant's deck had been cleared of non-essential personnel, creating an impressive display of military readiness and international cooperation. When Captain Yamamoto emerged from the Akagi's launch boat, the morning air seemed to charge with expectation. Despite being in his 50s, he moved with the precision of a career naval officer. His dress blue uniform was immaculate, his bearing commanding. Behind him followed 6 Japanese Maritime Self-Defense Force officers, each carrying specialized equipment cases and technical documentation. "Welcome aboard the USS Valiant, Captain Yamamoto." Harrison stepped forward with an extended hand and practiced smile. "We are honored to work with the Japanese Maritime Self-Defense Force on this critical mission." Yamamoto offered a slight bow and brief handshake. Then, turning to his officers, he began speaking rapidly in Japanese. The flowing sounds of the language filled the bridge as his team responded with technical questions and operational concerns. Harrison maintained his smile, while concern flickered behind his eyes. The conversation was clearly more complex than basic pleasantries about rescue coordination. He discreetly reached for his tablet, ready to deploy the military translation software if necessary. Lieutenant Commander Sato, one of Yamamoto's officers identified as his executive officer, noticed Harrison's discomfort. Speaking in accented but clear English, he said, "Captain Yamamoto is reviewing the rescue parameters in deep-sea conditions. He has concerns about current patterns affecting our diving operations." "Excellent," Harrison brightened. "Please assure the captain that we've prepared comprehensive briefings on local conditions, and our technical teams have coordinated with yours on all equipment specifications." As the group moved toward the bridge for the operational briefing, crew members appeared from designated positions to handle equipment transfers between the two vessels. In the background, maintaining standard deck operations, Marcus Thompson worked near the superstructure, staying in the shadows as instructed. His ears caught every word of the Japanese conversation, including Captain Yamamoto's actual comment. "The Americans seem prepared superficially, but I'm concerned about their understanding of our operational requirements and deep-sea rescue protocols." The crisis begins. An hour later, Harrison led Captain Yamamoto and his team into the Valiant's Combat Information Center for the critical operational briefing. Banks of screens displayed sonar readings, weather data, and the precise location of the sunken civilian vessel. The rescue window was narrowing with each passing hour as survivors' air supplies dwindled. "Our analysis shows the commercial vessel Pacific Star rests at 400 feet, just beyond standard diving depth," Harrison began, his team distributing technical folders. "We've calculated current patterns, structural stability, and survivor locations based on the ship's last communications." Lieutenant Commander Sato translated, but Captain Yamamoto's attention had already shifted to the sonar displays. He spoke rapidly to his officers, pointing to specific readings and making notes on waterproof charts. "Captain Yamamoto is questioning the accuracy of your depth calculations," Sato explained. "He believes the vessel may have shifted during the night due to underwater currents. His ship's advanced sonar suggests the wreck is at 450 feet, not 400. Harrison blinked, unprepared for such a fundamental disagreement. "Our equipment is the most advanced in the fleet. I'm confident in our readings." Yamamoto interrupted with a longer, more insistent statement, his tone suggesting urgency. He gestured toward his own technical displays and conferred with his diving specialists. "The captain says the difference is critical," Sato continued, his translation becoming more strained. "At 450 feet, the rescue operation requires different equipment, different procedures, and significantly more risk. He's asking if your dive teams are certified for that depth with the rescue equipment we're proposing to use." The temperature in the CIC seemed to rise. Harrison's carefully prepared briefing was unraveling into technical territory he hadn't anticipated. The rescue operation's success depended on precise coordination between the two navies, but they couldn't even agree on basic depth readings. Harrison reached for his tablet. "Let me ensure we're understanding each other correctly," he said, opening the military translation app and speaking into it. "Could Captain Yamamoto clarify his concerns about our depth measurements and diving procedures?" Yamamoto spoke directly into the device. The app processed his rapid Japanese, then produced an English translation that made several officers wince. Deep fish problem and American underwater man not ready for dangerous low swimming. The absurd translation hung in the air. Yamamoto's expression darkened as he realized the technology had failed catastrophically. One of his officers suppressed what might have been laughter, while others exchanged concerned glances. Harrison tried again, speaking more slowly and clearly. "Captain, we need to coordinate our rescue diving procedures for the civilian survivors." This time, the translation came back as, "Sea Captain Fish saving humans swimming together happy cooperation." Yamamoto stood abruptly and spoke sharply to Sato, his tone clearly indicating frustration with the communication breakdown. Sato looked uncomfortable as he translated. "Captain Yamamoto suggests that if we cannot communicate effectively about basic operational parameters, perhaps this joint operation is not advisable. Lives are at stake, and miscommunication in deep-sea rescue is deadly." The briefing hadn't even covered the rescue timeline, and already Harrison could feel international cooperation and 43 lives slipping away. He glanced desperately at his officers, who stared back with equal helplessness. The most advanced military technology in the world had proven useless when they needed it most. Through the CIC's porthole, Harrison could see the clock on the bulkhead marking precious minutes lost. Somewhere beneath 450 feet of Pacific Ocean, survivors were running out of time, air, and hope. The hidden solution. Throughout the communication crisis, Marcus had been conducting routine maintenance in the passageway outside the CIC. Standard protocol required all non-essential personnel to remain clear during high-level briefings, but his duties included checking emergency communication systems throughout the ship. 4 years of Navy service had perfected his ability to work invisibly around command operations. Officers discussed classified operations while he tested radio circuits, strategized international missions while he calibrated equipment. But unlike other maintenance periods, today he understood every word exchanged in both languages. He'd caught the fundamental disagreement about the wreck's depth, a difference that could mean the rescue operation's success or failure. He'd understood Captain Yamamoto's growing frustration with the Americans' apparent lack of preparation for deep-sea rescue complications. Most importantly, he'd heard the subtle implication that the Japanese captain was questioning not just the translation technology, but American competence in international maritime cooperation. As he tested communication panels near the CIC entrance, Marcus felt the familiar weight of decision. The same weight he'd carried with each rejected application for intelligence positions, with each student loan payment notice, with each day his language skills remained locked away in his personal quarters. Through the CIC's open hatch, he could see Harrison's increasingly desperate attempts to salvage the mission briefing. He watched Yamamoto's officers exchanging worried glances about the communication breakdown. He noted Sato's diplomatic struggle to soften his captain's growing concerns about American preparedness. Marcus's hand stilled on the radio panel. The maintenance staff and junior enlisted personnel were meant to be invisible during such briefings. 4 years of careful separation between his duties and his capabilities. 4 years of protecting himself from the disappointment of being overlooked yet again. The memory of his previous assignment still stung. After helping coordinate with Japanese vessels during a training exercise, he'd been counseled about exceeding his authority rather than recognized for preventing a potential international incident. "Stay in your lane, sailor," his division officer had advised. "Enlisted personnel don't conduct diplomacy." Since then, he'd kept his language abilities carefully concealed, using his paycheck to pay down student loans while applying for intelligence positions that required his exact qualifications. 47 applications in the past year alone, 31 interviews, 0 offers. The Navy needed his skills but couldn't see past his rank. Now, hearing the Japanese rescue coordination falling apart, Marcus felt conflicting impulses war within him. Professional survival urged caution. Why risk humiliation for officers who'd never acknowledged his existence? What did he owe Harrison, who'd never learned his name despite 18 months aboard the same ship? Yet something deeper pushed against these practical concerns. Pride in his abilities, frustration at their continued waste, and perhaps most powerfully, the knowledge that 43 civilians were drowning while a translation app butchered the conversation that could save them. Marcus removed his work gloves and straightened his uniform. 4 years of invisibility were about to end. Breaking protocol. Marcus stepped away from his maintenance station and knocked firmly on the CIC's entrance frame. Every head turned, expressions ranging from confusion to irritation at the interruption from enlisted personnel during a critical briefing. Harrison recovered first, his command voice sharp with stress. "Not now, sailor. We're conducting classified operations." Marcus ignored the dismissal, focusing instead on Captain Yamamoto. Taking a deep breath, he spoke in fluent, formally correct Japanese. "Honorable Captain Yamamoto, I couldn't help but overhear your concerns about the depth calculations and diving procedures. Perhaps I might assist with the communication difficulties." The CIC fell silent. Yamamoto's eyebrows rose in genuine surprise, the first unguarded expression he'd shown since coming aboard. Lieutenant Commander Sato's mouth opened slightly. The technical officers exchanged glances of confusion mixed with interest. Harrison stared at Marcus as if he'd suddenly materialized from another dimension. "What the hell are you doing?" Harrison stammered. Yamamoto recovered quickly, studying Marcus with sharp intelligence. He responded in rapid, technical Japanese, deliberately using complex maritime rescue terminology to test the sailor's comprehension. "Your Japanese is unexpected from American Navy personnel. Perhaps you can explain how your depth measurements account for tidal influences and underwater current patterns affecting a 7,000-ton vessel resting on an unstable seabed." Without hesitation, Marcus replied with a detailed analysis in Japanese, explaining the Valiant's sonar methodology while acknowledging the superior accuracy of the Akagi's newer deep-sea detection systems. He suggested a coordinate approach using both ships' data to triangulate the exact position and depth. As he spoke, the atmosphere in the CIC transformed. Yamamoto's officers began taking notes, their body language shifting from skeptical to interested. Sato watched with professional assessment, his expression mixing surprise with growing respect. Harrison's shock evolved into confusion, then dawning realization of an unexpected lifeline. "Seaman Thompson," Harrison's voice carried a mixture of authority and desperation. "What exactly are your qualifications?" "Sir, I have advanced certification in Japanese language and culture from the Defense Language Institute, with specialization in maritime and military terminology," Marcus replied, maintaining military bearing despite the extraordinary circumstances. Harrison pulled Marcus aside, lowering his voice, but not enough to prevent others from hearing. "Why wasn't this in your service record?" "It was, sir. Page 3 of my personnel file, under additional qualifications." Before Harrison could respond, Yamamoto addressed Marcus directly in Japanese, asking about his background and how an American sailor had acquired such detailed knowledge of Japanese naval operations. "I spent 2 years studying in Japan as part of a Navy language program," Marcus explained in Japanese, then translated for the CIC. "I was trained specifically for international naval cooperation and maritime rescue operations." Harrison looked as if he'd been struck by lightning. For 18 months, a fully qualified interpreter had been swabbing decks and maintaining equipment while the ship struggled with international operations that required exactly his skills. Yamamoto nodded slowly, then spoke to his officers in rapid Japanese before addressing Marcus again. "Your language ability is impressive, but this rescue operation requires understanding of technical systems and procedures. Do you comprehend the complexities we're discussing?" Marcus replied with a detailed explanation of deep-sea rescue protocols, comparing American and Japanese techniques and suggesting specific equipment combinations that would optimize the mission. His knowledge went beyond mere translation. He understood the engineering, the dangers, and the precise coordination required. The CIC had become completely focused on the conversation between Marcus and the Japanese officers. Harrison, realizing that his mission was being salvaged by a sailor he'd never properly acknowledged, stepped forward. "Seaman Thompson will serve as our official interpreter for this operation," he announced, though his tone suggested he was still processing the situation's surreal nature. But finding his voice. Harrison gestured toward a chair at the main plotting table. The first time in Marcus's Navy career that he'd been invited to participate, rather than simply observe. "Take a seat, Seaman Thompson. Help us coordinate with Captain Yamamoto." As Marcus sat down, still in his work uniform among officers in their dress blues, he felt the weight of every gaze in the CIC. The invisible sailor suddenly occupying center stage in an international operation worth millions of dollars and dozens of lives. Yamamoto leaned forward, speaking directly to Marcus in Japanese. "The rescue operation requires precision timing. Our ships must position within 50 meters of each other above the wreck while maintaining exact station-keeping in 4-foot seas. My concern is whether your ship's dynamic positioning system can maintain such accuracy." Marcus translated the technical question, then provided additional context in English. "Captain Yamamoto is asking about our DP system, because the Akagi uses a different positioning technology. If we can't maintain exact relative position, the diving operations become extremely dangerous." Harrison nodded, beginning to understand how Marcus wasn't just translating words, but bridging operational concepts between two different naval systems. "Our DP system is certified for precision operations. How do we coordinate the positioning between our ships?" Marcus relayed the question, then continued the technical discussion in Japanese with Yamamoto and his diving specialists. The conversation evolved beyond simple translation into a sophisticated exploration of international rescue coordination. Marcus wasn't just conveying words between languages, he was facilitating the integration of two different naval philosophies and operational procedures. The Japanese approach emphasizes redundant safety systems and slower, methodical procedures, Marcus explained to Harrison and the American officers. "Our doctrine prioritizes speed and aggressive action. For this rescue, we need to blend both approaches." He then addressed specific technical challenges, suggesting modifications to diving procedures that would satisfy both American urgency and Japanese safety requirements. His recommendations were so practical that Yamamoto asked his technical officer to take detailed notes. When Yamamoto inquired about specific emergency contingencies, Marcus offered analysis that surprised even the Japanese officers. "Both our navies have different protocols for diving emergencies at this depth. We should establish unified procedures now, before the operation begins, rather than trying to coordinate during a crisis." The suggestion was so practical that Harrison immediately agreed. The next hour was spent developing integrated emergency procedures, with Marcus serving as both interpreter and technical advisor. His understanding extended beyond translation to practical engineering solutions. "You understand these systems better than most officers," Yamamoto remarked to Marcus in Japanese. "How did someone with your qualifications come to be working in ship maintenance?" Before Marcus could answer, Harrison interjected, having caught enough of the conversation to understand its thrust. "That's an excellent question, Captain Yamamoto, one I intend to address immediately after this operation." The admission hung in the CIC's air, an acknowledgement of systematic failure to utilize available talent. Marcus felt simultaneous vindication and professional uncertainty. Recognition had arrived, but at the cost of revealing how completely his abilities had been wasted. As the technical coordination continued, something remarkable happened. The joint operation transformed from a struggle against language barriers into a showcase of international naval cooperation. Yamamoto's initial skepticism about American competence had been replaced by growing confidence in the mission's success. The rescue operation. With communication barriers finally eliminated, the rescue operation moved into its critical phase. Both destroyers took position above the sunken Pacific Star, their hulls cutting through Pacific swells with mechanical precision. Below them, at precisely 453 feet, the corrected depth Yamamoto had calculated, 43 survivors waited in air pockets within the commercial vessel's hull. Marcus stood on the Valiant's bridge, no longer invisible maintenance personnel, but the critical communication link between two navies. His role had expanded beyond translation to become the operational coordinator, ensuring both ships worked as a unified rescue force. Akagi reports their first diving team is prepared for descent, Marcus relayed after receiving communications from the Japanese vessel. Captain Yamamoto requests confirmation of our positioning accuracy. DP system shows us locked within 2 meters of optimal position, Harrison replied. Tell the captain we're ready to commence operations. The rescue required unprecedented coordination. Japanese divers, with their superior deep-sea equipment, would penetrate the wreck to locate survivors, while American divers would establish escape routes and provide emergency support. Both teams would work simultaneously at depths that challenged human physiology and equipment limitations. Yamamoto's team has reached the main deck, Marcus reported, monitoring communications between both diving operations. They're reporting structural damage more severe than anticipated. The ship is unstable and could shift during rescue operations. This was exactly the kind of complication that had worried the Japanese captain. Harrison's jaw tightened as he realized how close they'd come to attempting the rescue with inadequate depth calculations and insufficient safety procedures. American diving team confirms contact with survivor compartment, the diving supervisor reported. We count 31 people in the main air pocket, 12 more in the engine room space. Marcus translated the updates for Yamamoto while simultaneously coordinating rescue timing between both ships. The operation required split-second timing, too fast, and safety protocols would be compromised, too slow, and the unstable wreck might collapse. Japanese divers report structural groaning in the lower compartments, Marcus announced. Captain Yamamoto recommends accelerating the rescue timeline. The wreck may not remain stable much longer. Harrison made the command decision. All diving teams implement emergency extraction protocols. We're racing against structural failure. The next 2 hours tested every aspect of international naval cooperation. Survivors were brought up in small groups, each rescue requiring precise coordination between American and Japanese diving teams. Marcus maintained constant communication, translating not just words, but the urgent decisions that kept divers and survivors alive. Yamamoto reports his deep-sea specialists are attempting to reach the engine room survivors, Marcus relayed. The space is partially flooded, but they believe they can establish an airlock for extraction. The engineering complexity of the rescue was staggering. Both ships' crews worked with mechanical precision, their previous communication problems forgotten in the intensity of saving lives. Marcus found himself translating technical discussions between dive teams, medical assessments of survivors, and emergency modifications to equipment, all while maintaining the calm professionalism that kept the operation functioning. Last group of survivors is ascending, Marcus announced as the final rescue phase began. Both diving teams report successful extraction from all compartments. As survivors were brought aboard both destroyers, Harrison watched the operation he'd nearly lost to translation software become a textbook example of international maritime cooperation. Yamamoto's initial concerns about American preparedness had been replaced by genuine respect for the coordinated professionalism of both crews. Captain Yamamoto requests permission to come aboard the Valiant, Marcus translated. He wishes to personally commend the rescue operation's success. Harrison's response was immediate. "Tell the captain he's welcome aboard any time. This operation succeeded because of international cooperation and exceptional individual performance." His eyes met Marcus's, the unspoken acknowledgement clear. The rescue had been saved not by advanced technology or command authority, but by a sailor whose abilities had been invisible for 18 months. Recognition and revelation. As the rescue operation concluded and both ships secured from emergency operations, Captain Yamamoto crossed to the Valiant for the formal mission debrief. The successful extraction of 43 survivors had transformed what began as a communication disaster into a showcase of international naval cooperation. In the CIC, now configured for post-operation analysis, Yamamoto addressed both American and Japanese officers through Marcus's translation. Today's rescue operation demonstrated the highest levels of professional seamanship and international cooperation. The lives saved are testimony to both navies' capabilities. He turned specifically to Marcus, speaking in Japanese. "Your linguistic abilities and technical knowledge made this success possible. Without proper communication, this operation would have failed catastrophically." Harrison, understanding the tribute through Marcus's translation, stepped forward. "Seaman Thompson's performance today has been extraordinary. His language skills and technical expertise were critical to our success." The admission carried weight beyond simple commendation. Every officer in the CIC understood that 18 months of overlooked capability had been revealed in a single operation. The implications extended beyond Marcus's individual situation to systematic questions about talent recognition and utilization. Yamamoto continued, addressing Harrison directly through Marcus. "Captain Yamamoto wishes to understand how an individual with such qualifications came to be working in ship maintenance rather than international operations or intelligence. In the Japanese Maritime Self-Defense Force, language specialists with technical expertise hold positions commensurate with their abilities." The question hit Harrison like a depth charge. The successful rescue operation had exposed not just Marcus's hidden capabilities, but a fundamental failure in Navy personnel management. How many other critical skills were buried in inappropriate assignments throughout the fleet? "The Navy's personnel system sometimes fails to properly match qualifications with assignments," Harrison replied diplomatically. "We're committed to correcting such oversights." Marcus maintained his professional bearing despite the extraordinary circumstances. 18 months of invisibility had ended in a single day, but recognition came with uncertainty about his future role and responsibilities. "Seaman Thompson," Harrison continued, "I want to discuss your career prospects immediately after we complete this debrief. Your performance today demonstrates capabilities the Navy needs to utilize properly." The statement carried implications beyond individual recognition. The rescue operation had revealed systematic problems in how the military identified and employed specialized skills, particularly among enlisted personnel whose talents might not be apparent through routine service records. Yamamoto withdrew a business card from his uniform pocket. Not the standard exchange card, but one bearing special significance in Japanese naval culture. "This contains my direct contact information. The Japanese Maritime Self-Defense Force maintains active exchange programs with the U.S. Navy for personnel with your qualifications. Should you be interested in international maritime cooperation assignments, I would personally recommend your application." Marcus accepted the card with appropriate respect, recognizing both the honor and the opportunity it represented. Yamamoto's offer meant potential assignment to international programs that would fully utilize his language and technical capabilities. Harrison observed the exchange with mixed emotions, pride in his sailor's recognition, but also awareness that proper career utilization might mean losing Marcus to assignments better suited to his abilities. Transformation. 6 weeks after the rescue operation, Marcus stood on the bridge of the USS Valiant wearing the insignia of a newly promoted petty officer second class. His work uniform had been supplemented by qualification badges, recognizing his language capabilities and international operations expertise. The promotion had come with assignment to the ship's newly created International Liaison Division. His old maintenance duties had been reassigned to other sailors. His cramped enlisted quarters had been upgraded to accommodate his expanded responsibilities and the reference materials required for his new position. The Japanese language certificate, hidden for years in his personal effects, now hung prominently in the ship's intelligence center alongside commendations for the Pacific Star rescue operation. The transformation extended beyond individual recognition. Fleet Command had initiated a comprehensive review of personnel assignments, seeking to identify other sailors and officers whose abilities might be underutilized. The Thompson Protocol, as it became known informally, established procedures for identifying and properly employing language specialists and cultural experts throughout the Navy. Harrison had been selected for promotion to captain based partly on the successful international cooperation demonstrated during the rescue operation. In his fitness reports, he'd emphasized the critical importance of recognizing hidden talent within existing personnel, turning his own oversight into a leadership lesson about maximizing human resources. The Valiant had been designated as a primary platform for international naval cooperation exercises, with Marcus serving as the cultural and linguistic advisor for operations involving Asian naval forces. His invisible years had ended. His actual career had begun. In the ship's newly established International Programs Office, Marcus reviewed coordination plans for upcoming exercises with South Korean, Australian, and Thai naval forces. Each operation would require the cultural sensitivity and technical expertise he'd developed during years of private study and professional frustration. His student loans had been restructured through Navy programs supporting personnel in critical language assignments. The financial pressure that had kept him in maintenance roles had been replaced by career stability and professional growth opportunities. On his desk sat several framed items. His Defense Language Institute certificate, finally displayed professionally after years in storage. A letter of appreciation from the Japanese Maritime Self-Defense Force recognizing his role in the Pacific Star rescue, and a photograph from the successful operation showing him coordinating between American and Japanese naval officers. Through his office porthole, he could see other Navy vessels conducting routine operations in the Pacific. He wondered how many Marcus Thompsons served aboard those ships. Qualified personnel whose abilities remained hidden behind routine assignments and institutional blindness. The larger picture. The success of the Pacific Star rescue operation had created ripple effects throughout the Pacific Fleet and beyond. The Valiant's integration of international cooperation capabilities had become a model for other commands, seeking to improve their multinational operation effectiveness. Marcus found himself briefing senior officers on cultural considerations for international naval exercises, contributing to operational planning at levels far beyond his previous enlisted responsibilities. His insights into Japanese, South Korean, and other Asian naval traditions had proven invaluable for successful multinational operations. The transformation hadn't been without challenges. Some career Navy personnel resented the rapid advancement of someone who'd been maintaining equipment months earlier. Others questioned whether enlisted personnel, regardless of qualifications, should hold positions traditionally reserved for commissioned officers. But the practical results were undeniable. International exercises that had previously suffered from cultural misunderstandings and communication difficulties now proceeded smoothly with proper linguistic and cultural support. The Navy's reputation for effective international cooperation had been enhanced through systematic attention to cultural competence. Captain Harrison, now preparing for his new assignment to Fleet Command, had made personnel utilization and talent recognition central themes of his leadership philosophy. The oversight that had nearly cost the Pacific Star rescue had been transformed into advocacy for comprehensive personnel development throughout his new area of responsibility. In his final fitness report evaluation of Marcus, Harrison had written, "Petty Officer Thompson represents the Navy's future, multilingual, culturally competent, and technically excellent. His rapid integration into international operations demonstrates the critical importance of matching personnel capabilities with mission requirements. The Navy's investment in his development has yielded immeasurable returns in operational effectiveness and international relations." The commendation was more than individual recognition. It was acknowledgement of systematic change in how the military approached human resource development and utilization. International recognition. The success of the Pacific Star rescue had attracted attention beyond naval circles. Maritime safety organizations, international rescue coordination centers, and academic institutions studying multinational cooperation had requested briefings on the operation's lessons learned. Marcus found himself presenting at the Naval War College, explaining to senior officers and civilian maritime experts how cultural understanding and precise communication had made the difference between mission success and catastrophic failure. His presentations emphasized that technical capability alone was insufficient for international operations. Cultural competence was equally critical. The rescue operation succeeded not because we had better equipment or superior procedures, Marcus explained to a conference of international maritime safety experts, but because we finally achieved genuine communication and coordination between two different naval cultures with a shared mission. His analysis had broader implications for multinational military operations, international business cooperation, and diplomatic relations. The principle of recognizing and utilizing hidden human capabilities resonated beyond military applications. The Japanese Maritime Self-Defense Force had formally requested Marcus's temporary assignment to joint training programs, recognizing his unique ability to facilitate genuine cooperation between American and Asian naval forces. The assignment would represent the first enlisted exchange of its kind, acknowledging that effective international relations required cultural bridges at all organizational levels. Captain Yamamoto had visited the Valiant during a subsequent port call, specifically to commend Marcus's continued contributions to U.S.-Japanese naval cooperation. During the visit, he'd observed that the rescue operation had achieved something beyond saving civilian lives. It had demonstrated the possibility of genuine partnership between different military cultures when communication barriers were properly addressed. Cooperation, Yamamoto had remarked, requires individuals who understand that different does not mean inferior. It simply means different approaches to shared objectives. The rescue operation had proven that premise. American speed and Japanese precision, when properly coordinated through genuine communication, had achieved results neither Navy could have accomplished independently. The Hidden Talents Initiative. 6 months after the Pacific Star rescue, the USS Valiant had become the flagship for a new Navy-wide program, the Hidden Talents Initiative. Marcus had been promoted again, now serving as Chief Petty Officer and Program Coordinator for identifying and developing underutilized skills throughout the Pacific Fleet. The program's success exceeded all expectations. In the first 6 months, 347 sailors and officers had been identified with language, technical, or cultural skills that didn't match their current assignments. Languages represented included Arabic, Mandarin, Korean, Russian, Spanish, and various African dialects. Technical skills ranged from advanced engineering to computer programming to international law. "We discovered a nuclear engineer working as a cook," Marcus explained during a briefing to Fleet Command. "A former State Department interpreter serving as a yeoman, a cybersecurity specialist assigned to food service. The Navy has been systematically underutilizing human capital on a massive scale." The program's methodology was straightforward: comprehensive skills inventories, voluntary disclosure of additional qualifications, and systematic matching of capabilities with operational requirements. The results had been transformational for both individuals and organizational effectiveness. Marcus's office had become a hub for career counseling, international coordination, and cross-cultural training. Sailors who had been invisible in inappropriate assignments were finding professional recognition and meaningful work that utilized their actual capabilities. The program had also revealed systemic problems in Navy recruitment, training, and assignment procedures. Personnel systems that relied on initial military occupational specialty assignments often failed to account for skills acquired through civilian education, personal study, or cultural background. Every person who joins the Navy brings their whole self, not just the skills we initially recognize, Marcus had testified to a congressional subcommittee investigating military personnel utilization. We've been wasting human resources that could dramatically improve our operational capabilities. The testimony had led to legislative requirements for comprehensive skills assessment and regular career counseling throughout military service. The Thompson model had been adopted across all service branches as a best practice for human resource development. Full circle. 2 years after the Pacific Star rescue, Marcus stood on the bridge of the USS Valiant as it prepared to participate in Exercise Pacific Guardian, the largest international naval cooperation exercise in Pacific Fleet history. 15 nations would participate, requiring coordination across multiple languages, cultures, and operational procedures. As the exercise's international cooperation coordinator, Marcus would facilitate communication and cultural understanding among navies from Japan, South Korea, Australia, Thailand, Singapore, and 10 other nations. The exercise would test everything learned from the rescue operation about the critical importance of genuine multinational cooperation. Captain Harrison, now Rear Admiral Harrison, and commander of the exercise, had made international competence a central theme of American Pacific Fleet operations. The transformation that began with one overlooked sailor had evolved into systematic change in how the Navy approached global operations. Chief Thompson, Admiral Harrison addressed Marcus as they reviewed exercise plans. 2 years ago, you were invisible on this same bridge. Today, you're coordinating the largest multinational naval exercise in Pacific Fleet history. That transformation represents more than individual recognition. It represents organizational evolution. Marcus nodded, understanding the broader implications. The rescue operation had saved 43 civilian lives, but the systematic changes that followed had potentially saved careers, improved operational effectiveness, and enhanced international relations across the entire Pacific region. Through the bridge windows, they could see ships from 15 nations taking position for the exercise. Each vessel represented different naval traditions, operational procedures, and cultural perspectives. The exercise would succeed or fail based on the same principles that had made the Pacific Star rescue possible: genuine communication, cultural understanding, and recognition that different approaches could be complementary rather than competitive. The real lesson from the Pacific Star rescue, Marcus reflected, wasn't about language skills or cultural competence. It was about seeing people completely, recognizing that every individual brings capabilities that might not be apparent from their current assignment or official duties. The exercise commenced with Marcus coordinating between multiple flag bridges, translating not just languages but cultural concepts, operational philosophies, and tactical approaches. The same skills that had been invisible while maintaining equipment were now central to the largest naval cooperation exercise in Pacific Fleet history. As multinational task forces maneuvered in complex formations, practicing everything from humanitarian assistance to maritime security operations, the principles of recognition and utilization that had emerged from one sailor's hidden abilities were being applied on an international scale. Sopter the ripple effect. The success of Exercise Pacific Guardian had attracted global attention to the transformation of Pacific Fleet international operations. Military observers from NATO, African Union, and Latin American naval forces had requested briefings on the organizational changes that had improved multinational cooperation capabilities. Marcus found himself consulting for other military services, international organizations, and even civilian corporations seeking to better utilize human resources and improve cross-cultural operations. The principles developed from Navy experience had broader applications for any organization operating across cultural and linguistic boundaries. The fundamental insight, Marcus explained during a presentation to international business leaders, is that organizations often possess capabilities they don't recognize. The challenge isn't acquiring new skills, it's identifying and utilizing the skills that already exist within your workforce. His consulting work had revealed that the Navy's problems were not unique. Corporate executives discovered engineers working in administrative roles, linguists assigned to purely technical positions, and cultural experts whose backgrounds were ignored in favor of their immediate job qualifications. The business applications were immediately apparent. Companies operating internationally needed exactly the kind of comprehensive cultural competence that Marcus had developed through years of study and professional frustration. Organizations that successfully identified and utilized hidden talents gained competitive advantages in global markets. Academic institutions had begun studying the Thompson model as an example of how systematic organizational blindness could be overcome through proper assessment procedures and cultural change. Business schools incorporated case studies of the Pacific Star Rescue into courses on international management, human resource development, and organizational effectiveness. The transformation had created a feedback loop. Individual recognition led to systematic change, which improved organizational capabilities, which created opportunities for other overlooked individuals to contribute their hidden talents to meaningful work. Looking forward, 5 years after the Pacific Star Rescue Operation, Chief Petty Officer Marcus Thompson stood before the newest class of Naval Academy midshipmen, delivering the annual lecture on international naval cooperation. The young officers in training represented the Navy's future, and understanding cross-cultural competence would be critical to their effectiveness in an increasingly interconnected world. 5 years ago, I was maintaining equipment in the lower decks of a destroyer, Marcus began, his voice carrying the authority of experience. I had advanced language qualifications and international relations education, but I was invisible to the officers responsible for utilizing those capabilities. He gestured toward a photograph of the Pacific Star Rescue Operation displayed behind him. 43 people are alive today because circumstances finally made my skills visible. But that rescue operation taught us something more important than the value of any individual's abilities. It demonstrated that every organization contains hidden capabilities waiting to be discovered and utilized. The midshipmen listened with the intensity of students, understanding that their future effectiveness as naval officers would depend partly on their ability to recognize and develop the talents of the sailors they would someday command. Your challenge as future naval leaders will be to see beyond rank insignia, rate badges, and job descriptions to understand the complete capabilities of every person in your command. The Navy's strength lies not just in our technology or our tactics, but in our people, all of our people, at every level of the organization. Marcus clicked to the next slide, showing statistics on personnel utilization improvements throughout the Pacific Fleet. The Hidden Talents Initiative has identified over 2,000 sailors and officers whose capabilities were underutilized in their previous assignments. Those individuals are now contributing their full potential to naval operations, ranging from international cooperation to advanced technology development. He paused, making eye contact with several midshipmen in the front row. Some of you will command ships, others will lead specialized units, and all of you will be responsible for maximizing human potential within the organizations you serve. Remember that the most valuable capabilities are sometimes the least visible ones. The lecture concluded with interactive exercises in cross-cultural communication and scenarios requiring the identification of hidden talents within simulated command situations. The future officers practiced the skills of comprehensive personnel assessment that had been systematically developed throughout the fleet. After the presentation, several midshipmen approached with questions about international naval cooperation, language development, and career planning. Their inquiries reflected awareness that modern naval operations required cultural competence alongside traditional military skills. "Chief Thompson," one midshipman asked, "how do we identify hidden talents in our own crews when we become department heads?" Marcus smiled, recognizing the question that had become central to modern naval leadership development. "Start by talking to your people, really talking to them, not just about their assigned duties, but about their backgrounds, interests, and capabilities. Ask about their education, their travels, their languages, their technical hobbies. Most importantly, listen to their answers and consider how those capabilities might contribute to your unit's mission effectiveness." He continued, "The sailor maintaining your equipment might be a qualified engineer. The yeoman processing your paperwork might speak 4 languages. The cook preparing your meals might have a degree in international relations. Your job as a leader is to discover those capabilities and find ways to utilize them for everyone's benefit." The advice represented the systematization of lessons learned from years of organizational transformation. The Navy had evolved from an institution that sometimes wasted human talent to one that actively sought to discover and develop every individual's full potential. The global impact. The success of the Navy's Hidden Talents Initiative had attracted attention from international military and civilian organizations seeking to improve their own personnel utilization practices. Marcus had been invited to present at NATO headquarters, the United Nations, and various international business conferences on the principles of comprehensive talent recognition. The Pacific Star Rescue demonstrated that hidden capabilities can mean the difference between mission success and mission failure, Marcus explained to a gathering of international military commanders. But the systematic changes that followed proved that organizational transformation is possible when leadership commits to seeing people completely rather than simply filling predetermined roles. The audience represented 15 different nations, each facing similar challenges in maximizing human resources within complex organizational structures. The principles developed from Navy experience had universal applications for any institution seeking to improve effectiveness through better personnel utilization. Corporate executives attending the presentation recognized immediate applications for their global operations. Companies that successfully identified employees with hidden language, cultural, or technical capabilities gained significant advantages in international markets. The competitive implications of comprehensive talent recognition were becoming apparent across multiple industries. Academic researchers had documented the broader sociological implications of the transformation. Studies showed that organizations practicing systematic talent recognition experienced improved employee satisfaction, reduced turnover, enhanced innovation, and better performance across multiple metrics. The Thompson effect, as social scientists termed the phenomenon, had been observed in various organizational contexts beyond the military. Hospitals discovered that orderlies held advanced medical degrees from other countries. Technology companies found that administrative staff possessed programming skills equivalent to their engineering departments. Educational institutions realized that custodial workers included former teachers and professors whose credentials weren't recognized in the United States. Personal reflection. In his private moments, Marcus often reflected on the improbable journey from invisible sailor to internationally recognized expert on personnel utilization and cross-cultural competence. The transformation had required not just individual recognition, but systematic organizational change that created opportunities for others facing similar challenges. His small apartment near the naval base had been replaced by a comfortable home, suitable for hosting international visitors and conducting the cultural exchange programs that had become central to his expanded responsibilities. The cramped quarters that once held hidden educational certificates now displayed commendations from multiple nations, professional certifications, and photographs from international conferences. The financial pressures that had forced him to accept inappropriate assignments had been replaced by career stability and growth opportunities. His student loans had been forgiven through Navy programs supporting personnel in critical specialties. The economic desperation that had kept him invisible had been transformed into professional security and recognition. Yet Marcus remained aware that his success had depended partly on circumstances: the Pacific Star emergency that forced his capabilities into visibility, commanders willing to acknowledge their mistakes, and an organizational culture capable of learning from its oversights. How many equally qualified individuals remained invisible in inappropriate assignments throughout not just the Navy, but society as a whole? His consulting work had revealed thousands of similar stories. Immigrant professionals working in minimum-wage jobs because their credentials weren't recognized, former teachers driving delivery trucks because school districts couldn't see past their lack of American educational experience, retired engineers working in retail because age discrimination prevented them from using their technical expertise. The problem extended beyond military personnel management to fundamental questions about how society recognizes, values, and utilizes human capability. Marcus had become an advocate not just for better military personnel practices, but for systematic approaches to discovering and developing hidden talents throughout American society. The continuing mission. Today, 10 years after the Pacific Star rescue, Rear Admiral Marcus Thompson, the first enlisted sailor promoted directly to flag rank in Navy history, commands the Pacific Fleet's International Cooperation Task Force. His mission encompasses not just military operations, but the development of comprehensive cultural competence throughout American naval forces. The transformation from invisible maintenance sailor to flag officer had required congressional approval, acknowledgement that traditional promotion pathways sometimes failed to recognize exceptional capability and contribution. His promotion had established precedent for merit-based advancement, regardless of traditional career patterns. The task force he now commands includes officers and enlisted personnel from multiple nations, representing the systematic internationalization of naval operations that began with a single rescue mission. Ships under his command regularly conduct multinational exercises, humanitarian assistance operations, and cultural exchange programs throughout the Pacific region. His flagship, the USS Valiant, the same destroyer where he once maintained equipment in anonymity, had been designated as the primary platform for international naval cooperation development. The ship's crew included language specialists, cultural advisors, and technical experts whose diverse capabilities were systematically identified and utilized rather than accidentally discovered during emergencies. The Hidden Talents Initiative had evolved into a comprehensive program affecting all aspects of Navy personnel management. Every sailor entering the service received detailed assessment of their complete capabilities, not just their intended military specialty. Career counseling included regular evaluation of additional skills and interests that might contribute to naval missions. The lesson of the Pacific Star rescue, Admiral Thompson explained during his change of command ceremony, is that every person possesses capabilities beyond what initially appears on their record. Our responsibility as leaders is to create organizations that discover, develop, and utilize those capabilities for the benefit of everyone we serve with and everyone we serve. Chock full recognition. The ceremony concluded with presentation of international commendations from 15 different nations, recognition of the contributions that systematic talent utilization had made to global maritime security and cooperation. Representatives from Japanese, South Korean, Australian, and other Pacific naval forces attended to acknowledge the transformation that had improved their own operational effectiveness. Captain Yamamoto, now Admiral Yamamoto, and commander of the Japanese Maritime Self-Defense Force, delivered remarks emphasizing that the rescue operation had achieved something beyond saving civilian lives. It had demonstrated the possibility of genuine international cooperation when communication barriers were properly addressed and human capabilities were fully recognized. The true measure of Rear Admiral Thompson's contribution, Admiral Yamamoto observed, is not his individual advancement from maintenance sailor to fleet commander, but the systematic changes that have created opportunities for thousands of others to contribute their hidden talents to meaningful work. The ceremony included recognition of 127 sailors and officers whose careers had been transformed through the Hidden Talents Initiative. Former maintenance personnel now served as international liaison officers, previous food service workers had become language specialists, and sailors who once performed routine duties now contributed specialized expertise to complex international operations. Each success story represented not just individual achievement, but validation of the principle that organizations possess far greater capabilities than they typically recognize or utilize. The systematic discovery and development of hidden talents had become a competitive advantage for the entire Pacific Fleet. As Admiral Thompson assumed command of the International Cooperation Task Force, he carried with him the responsibility of continuing to evolve naval personnel practices and international cooperation capabilities. The invisible sailor who once maintained equipment while possessing unused qualifications had become the architect of systematic change affecting thousands of military careers and international relationships, or the ongoing legacy. In conference rooms throughout Washington, D.C., Pentagon officials studied the Thompson model as they developed personnel policies for all military services. The principles discovered through Navy experience had applications for Army, Air Force, Marine Corps, and Space Force operations requiring comprehensive utilization of human capabilities. Congressional committees had mandated regular assessment of personnel utilization practices throughout the federal government. The waste of human capital that had kept Marcus invisible was being addressed systematically across civilian agencies as well as military organizations. International allies had requested assistance in developing their own talent recognition programs. NATO had adopted modified versions of the Hidden Talents Initiative for multinational military operations. The United Nations had implemented similar approaches for peacekeeping missions requiring cultural competence and language capabilities. Business schools taught case studies examining how the transformation of one sailor had led to organizational changes affecting thousands of military careers and international relationships. The strategic implications of comprehensive personnel utilization had become recognized components of competitive advantage in global markets. Yet Admiral Thompson remained focused on the individual level, ensuring that no sailor or officer experienced the professional invisibility that had characterized his early naval career. His personal involvement in career counseling and professional development continued the hands-on approach that had made systematic change possible. The rescue operation that began his transformation had saved 43 civilian lives. The organizational changes that followed had potentially saved thousands of military careers while improving international cooperation throughout the Pacific region. The ripple effects continued expanding across military and civilian organizations worldwide. In conclusion, seeing the invisible. As Admiral Thompson stood on the bridge of the USS Valiant, watching multinational naval forces conduct Exercise Pacific Guardian X, the 10th anniversary of the original exercise, he reflected on the unlikely journey from invisible sailor to flag officer responsible for international naval cooperation throughout the Pacific. The same ship where he had once maintained equipment while his language and cultural expertise remained hidden now served as the flagship for operations requiring exactly those capabilities. The transformation represented more than individual career advancement. It demonstrated the possibility of systematic organizational evolution when leadership committed to recognizing and developing human potential. Through the bridge windows, he observed ships from 23 nations maneuvering in complex formations, their crews working together across cultural and linguistic boundaries with the kind of seamless cooperation that had once seemed impossible. The communication difficulties that had nearly doomed the Pacific Star rescue had been replaced by systematic cultural competence and comprehensive language capabilities. The exercise would conclude with ceremonies recognizing the 10th anniversary of the rescue operation that had initiated the transformation. Survivors from the Pacific Star would participate, many now advocates for improved maritime safety and international cooperation. Their presence would remind everyone involved that the stakes of effective communication and coordination were measured in human lives, not just operational success. In quiet moments, Admiral Thompson often thought about the countless individuals who remained invisible in inappropriate assignments throughout society. Their capabilities unrecognized, their potential contributions unrealized, their talents wasted through organizational blindness. The transformation of naval personnel practices had addressed only a small portion of a much larger problem affecting institutions throughout American society and beyond. His continuing mission extended beyond military applications to advocacy for systematic recognition of human capability wherever it existed. Speaking engagements, consulting work, and educational programs carried the message that every organization possessed hidden talents waiting to be discovered and utilized for everyone's benefit. The Pacific Star rescue had proven that individual recognition could save lives. The systematic changes that followed had demonstrated that organizational transformation could improve effectiveness across multiple institutions and international relationships. The continuing expansion of those principles suggested the possibility of society-wide evolution in how human capabilities were recognized, valued, and utilized. The invisible sailor who once maintained equipment while possessing unused qualifications had become living proof that extraordinary potential often exists in the most unexpected places, waiting for circumstances that make hidden capabilities finally visible. His story continued inspiring others to look beyond apparent roles and assignments to discover the complete person behind every uniform, every job title, every organizational position. In workplaces, communities, and institutions throughout the world, the question raised by his transformation remained relevant. Who might be invisible right now? What extraordinary capabilities lie hidden behind ordinary assignments? And what might happen if leaders took responsibility for seeing people completely rather than simply filling predetermined roles? The answer, proven through 10 years of systematic change, was that organizations possessing the vision to discover and develop hidden talents gained capabilities far exceeding what appeared possible through conventional approaches. The competitive advantages were measurable, the human benefits were immeasurable, and the potential for continued transformation remained limitless. Admiral Marcus Thompson's journey from invisible maintenance sailor to flag officer commanding international naval cooperation had demonstrated that recognition changes everything, for individuals, for organizations, and ultimately for society itself. The story continued expanding because the principle remained universal. Everyone deserves to be seen, and extraordinary things happen when hidden capabilities finally become visible. The true value of a person, like a precious stone, isn't diminished by being temporarily overlooked. Its worth remains intact, waiting for the moment when the right eyes finally see its brilliance. In your workplace, your community, perhaps even in your home, who might be invisible right now? What extraordinary talents lie hidden behind ordinary titles? And what might happen if you were the one to finally see them?